All right, so that said, so we are on to, today we'll start with the fourth and final installment of CSR 342, which is we're going to go to retirement. The more astute students will notice that retirement is nothing but investments, long-term investments. So in a sense, we have completed the circle, connected the dots, however, whatever cliche you want to use. So this is like getting back to square one. How we started. With investments, we really end with investments, except this is on a retirement level, so long-term focus. So that's what we talk about for the next couple of weeks, and then it's final time. All right. Well, I guess, so this is a quote from George Foreman. Now, many of you know him as the grill guy, right? But he used to be a boxer before that, which was before most of you were born. He used to box, and he had these famous things with Muhammad Ali and all that stuff. So, but then, of course, he's known as the grill guy now. He sells grills. Did you know another trivia? George Foreman has like, I don't know, 7, 8 children. They're all George Foreman. Everybody's named George Foreman. George 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a guy who does, if this is a guy who's not a megalomaniac, I don't know what it is. He just has this huge love of himself. All right. So this is if there's one lesson you take away from this module, it is this, right here. We can end right here after this, and you'll be fine. But if you understand the concept of these two options, option A and option B, I think you're good. You don't have to listen to anything else. Well, maybe not. Totally true, but this is really the important bit here. So, and this talks about really, shows you the benefit of starting early with your retirement planning. So the former is an example of a 20-year-old who starts putting $375 a month for 10 years. Now again, we can quibble about the amount, etc. It doesn't matter. All it will do is have a scaling effect. But so don't lose sight of what we're talking about here. So 20-year-old puts 375, could be a different amount. I just picked this amount for 10 years. That's the important part. Is 20-year-old does it for 10 years in an investment account that pays an 8% annual rate. Again, you can quibble about the amount. Interest rate doesn't matter. You can put whatever interest rate you want. It'll still tell the story that I want to tell. And so in this case, if you do, it's a simple future value of annuity problem, which you guys should be able to do backwards and forwards now. So at 65, and remember, this is just putting money in monthly for 10 years. So 120 payments, 20 to 30, that's it. And then you do nothing. You just leave the money there. And it grows, compounded annually, 8% rate. At 65, 45 or so years, well, 65 from 30, well, 35 if you count from 30, from the times 30, the account will have over $1 million in it. Okay, you can do the math yourself. Compared to that, there is the procrastination option. That's option B. So you do nothing till you're 30. A 30-year-old now puts the same amount, that's the key, same amount, same monthly amount, but instead of 10 years, now tries to catch up and puts it for 30 years, 30 monthly. So 30 12s are 360 monthly payments compared to the 120 payments in the former option. Here he pays same monthly option amount for 360 monthly, 360 times because it's 30 years, and the same annual interest. If you do the math, you'll see that at 65, same ending point, the account will have just over $800,000 in it. So again, let me restate. You can change the amounts, you can change the interest rate, you can do, it's going to just have different amounts, but what will always be the case, true, is that option A will have more than option B. And the moral of the story is that if you start early, you can have more, significantly more, with significantly less money put in than if you start late. With the later option, you can see you can put in 3 times more as the former option, and you still end up with significantly less with the same growth, interest rate, and all that. And that's the key here. That's the key intuition. Not the interest rate or amount. Those things will simply change the totals. But the difference between option A and option B, option A always being greater than option B, will remain. That's the key. So the moral of the story is that it's never too late to start. You should start as soon as you're able to. Even if you don't afford $375, if you afford $50 a month, that's good enough right now to start with. And that's basically the moral of the story. So starting sooner helps because you let compounding work for you relative to waiting. In this case, 10 years just makes a huge difference. So that's sort of the moral of the story here. So that's the thing. I mean, and it's interesting. When you listen to, people like Warren Buffett and similar, or people of that ilk, they will tell you over and over again that if you do the right things, it's not about home runs. It's not about making this huge amount or winning the lottery or anything. If you do the right things the right way, over time, you will have enough to make you happy, be comfortable, whatever it is, whatever you define happiness to be. Everybody can do it. You just need discipline and you need patience. If you have those two things, you're good. And that's the example here. That's what is illustrated with that example. So, all right. That said, so we're going to talk about this retirement deal in 3 different classes over 3 different periods. So this retirement, overall the retirement thing can be broken down into three portions, 3 components. One is the Social Security aspect of it, which is what the government does for us, also known as social insurance. Pension, which is what you get from working in whatever job that you will work in. So pension savings or pension plan, 401k for most of us. And then what you do on your own, which is the third component, which is savings. So those are the 3 components of your retirement wealth at the end of the day. And so today we will spend time, and I promise you we won't go the entire time. We'll finish early, and that'll be my way of thanking you for coming to class today on such a nice day. But we'll talk about Social Security today, and then talk about pension in the next class, and then savings in the final class. All right. So, are there any questions before we get started?
What's a good percentage?
What is a good percentage of your annual income to put away for retirement every year? Just looking at averages. It's a very good question, but one that does not have a simple answer. And the answer is it depends. I hate to give those depends answers, but it is exactly what it is. There is no magic formula. Basically, the idea is this. You look at what you have, how much money is coming in for you, and what are the absolute necessities that you have to take care of. Those have higher priority at any time. After that, you look at the surplus, and then decide how much of that surplus you want to put away. And that's not a one-size-fits-all answer. So it depends on all of you. So you have to make that determination. But what is important is that you have to prioritize what is coming in versus what you need to you need to pay the bills. You need to pay your grocery bills. And those are kind of things, if you have children, you need to pay their daycare bills or whatever. Those are the kind of things that have really high priority. You're not going to sacrifice on those things in order to put money away for retirement. So that's the first thing. So that's a decision that each of you will have to do on your own, and look at whatever is the surplus, and then decide how much of that surplus you're going to put away in retirement. It could be the entire surplus. That's up to you. Right? So the choice is yours. There's no magic formula for that. It's a very good question, though. The question is, will that $1 million mean the same? Of course it won't. But that's not the point. The point is, saving will always be good. So whether $1 million 30 years from now is going to be equal to or close to $1 million, of course it won't be. I mean, I can tell you that. We don't have to be, but that's not the point, right? The point is and that you, whoa, these are just falling apart. The point is, what is the alternative? If you have nothing, then will that be acceptable? So you got to save. Of course, because of inflation and all that, value of $1 million today will be, it'll be much more than $1 million 30 years from now, or vice versa. $1 million 30 years from now is probably what, $600,000 in today's dollars, or something like that, 700,000. But it's still a significant savings. That's the point that we are trying to make, relative to waiting. So it's not whether $1 million is going to be $1 million. Of course it won't. But $800,000 or whatever, $500,000 then is going to be significantly less today also. So everything will be scaled up or down, relatively speaking. So what you're asking is an absolute question, and I'm talking relative stuff. So. Where do you put your savings that has high compounding rates? I think you mean, when you say compounding rates, you mean monthly compounding versus annual compounding? Well, banks have their usual compounding savings rates. It could be monthly, it could be annual. But my point is, savings rates and all that will change cyclically. Right now, it's very low. But in the next 10 years, it's going to probably be a lot higher than what it is today. And remember, when you're doing these, your time span is 30 to 40 years. So you cannot look at the conditions today and generalize anything. The idea is that over this window of time, put yourself in 40 years. Go look back 40 years. Of course, you weren't alive. You weren't born 40 years in the past. But think about where we were as a country and how many cycles of ups and downs from the 1970s we've been through till today. Those are the kind of number of cycles you will probably go through in the next 40 years, if not more. So there'll be periods when interest rates will be sky high. There'll be periods when interest rates will be at the bottom as they are today. But over the average, when you take a 40-year average, it's going to turn out to be about 7 or 8%. That's the thing. I have no idea about that question. That's too specific. When you file for bankruptcy, do you lose all your money in insurance? I do not believe so. You do not lose life insurance monies unless. And that part is tricky. I think a judge decides on some of these things in terms of what you owe and who you owe. There's certain things you cannot get out of. We know that. You have to pay alimony payments, you have to pay taxes, back taxes, and all that you cannot get rid of through filing for bankruptcy. After that, it's a gray area. I'm not an expert on that. Will we have Social Security when we retire? That's $1 million question, isn't it? I can tell you one thing for sure. Social Security in some form will be there. It's not going away. It may not be what it looks like today, but so what? Situation's different today than things were 50 years ago. Today's kids like you guys are way more knowledgeable about stock markets and stuff than people 50 years ago, when hardly anybody played the market. So there are a lot more things. Circumstances change, times change, opportunities change. So yes, Social Security in its current form may not be there. It may be a different animal. It will exist in some form. But, so it's impossible to predict what it'll be, but it will be there. It's not going to be totally disbanded. I do not believe that. Are there any drawbacks to not retiring? Are there any drawbacks to not retiring? In other words,
just keep working.
That's my strategy. That's my goal. I don't know about you guys, but so plus I have a 1.5-year-old, so yeah, I have reason to keep working. Okay. Let's see. Where make that? Interesting. There's a 5 to 10% is a good range. What is a good percentage? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. You hit all the good ones.
Yeah, I've heard rumors that Social Security is going to run out during our generation. Do you think it is true? Do I think it's going to run out? No. It's not going to run out for the simple reason that no elected official, president on downwards, will want to have that on his or her record as having presided over the demise of a 100-year-old institution. It's just not going to happen. It's just a political death sentence. So it's not going to happen. So no. It's just going to be extended. They're going to extend it, keep on, and kick the can down the road. So that's what's going to happen. So no, I do not believe that. This debate about a safety pin lock, that's interesting. I did not know that, but it doesn't surprise me. But at the same time, understand that if you talk about it and it becomes public knowledge, then, well, the thieves also know, right? So they might also factor that into their decision when they're holding that gun to your back and wanting you to draw money out for them from the ATM machine. So it's not clear whether that's going to really, at the end of the day, impact anything. You might put yourself in further danger by doing that. That's it?
Yep.
Oh, come on. I was hoping there'd be more. All right. Okay. So Social Security. So Social Security is a form of like a social insurance program that has been in the national psyche for a long, long time. From 17th, 18th century, some of the writings of our founding fathers, if you look at that, people had been talking about taking care of our own and in times when they cannot do so themselves, namely older, when you've reached a certain age. So this idea of fairness and helping others when they're not so fortunate has been in the national consciousness for a couple of hundred years, at the very least. So in 1935, the Social Security Act was put in place, and so the idea was that, formally put in place, and the idea was that it will tax people, working people during their lives, and take that money and pay to the retirees at that point. So it was not designed that every person who's working and pays taxes, Social Security taxes, has a kind of a account set for himself or herself, and that no, it was basically pay as you go. So today's workers fund retirees, and the idea is when the generations turn over, workers become retirees, then the current workers fund. So today you're funding retirees when you work, and then tomorrow or whatever, a number of generations later, when you become retirees, then the current workers fund you. So that's how the system was designed. You can ask why. Well, in those days, in 1930s, the retirement age was 60, and the average longevity was about 65. So the idea was, it kind of made perfect sense in those days that the idea was on average, people will receive about 5 years of Social Security help. And so there was no reason to think in the way we do now with our 401k plan type things. So it kind of made sense in those days to design it the way it was designed. The goal of this is not to replace your working period income, but just to give you a help, just to give you some kind of assistance in your overall retirement portfolio. So that was never. So we have that little grainy audio, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll listen to the original FDR's signing of the Social Security Act in 1935, and you'll if you listen carefully, you'll see that he uses the word that this is not meant to replace your retirement income. It is just meant to be a partial help for retirement. So it was never designed to be a replacement of your retirement, just to give you some assistance towards it. Again, how do you qualify? All of us qualify roughly. If you have a full-time job, the easy way to think about it is 10 years of working, 10 years of full-time job, working in a full-time position will qualify you for full qualification. So you get roughly 4 credits per year. 10 years is what it takes. A lot of you will start getting these Social Security statements annually if they have your right address and all that, where you'll get to see where you are in the process and when you are fully vested in retirement. So So as I described to you, this is current employees pay into the system, and then current retirees draw out of it. That's basically very simple as to how this thing works. Shall we retire to hot seat for a bit? Shall we?
We just have these.
Is it safer to invest in blue chip companies for a safe retirement future? Well, let's think about it. What do we know about, again, keep in mind two things. One is that you have a large window, right? So we're talking about a time frame of 30 to 40 years. That's a really long time. If you put money, most of your money into blue chip, there's nothing wrong with it. But the point is, blue chip companies, here's what we know about blue chip companies, right? They're very stable. There's nothing dramatic happening, so you're not going to lose money, probably, not a significant amount, but you're not going to make a whole lot of money either. And if your goal is to maximize your retirement portfolio over a 30 to 40 year period, ask yourself, do you really want to play that safe? Or do you want to take chances? And the relatively wise answer is that you want to take chances, because high risk implies that there's a chance you will make high returns. If you do not take chances, i.e. you put money in your very safe securities, your growth is going to be significantly slow. And the idea is when you have a window, investment window of 30 to 40 years, you should take chances, because even if things don't go right for a while, it's going to even out correct itself, and you're going to overall in the long term do well. So that's sort of my response to that. Oh yeah. So Social Security is completely automatic. Is there a way to opt out? No. I mean, you're going to say, what, I'm not going to pay taxes? You can't opt out of paying Social Security taxes, not to my knowledge. The IRS is going to be on you real quick. So no, I don't think you have an option to opt out. You could if you lived in some way out place, and then that's a whole different discussion. Okay. Yeah, average income is about, yes. Yes, it is, because Social Security actually is meant to be for the relatively less, people making more money. In proportional terms, you will get more in benefits. Sometimes when you make too much money, you're actually, you're not going to get most of the benefits of retirement because you just make too much money. And the goal is, if you make too much money, or you earn too much, or you have too much wealth, then you don't really need that assistance. So remember, this is a social insurance, a social fairness kind of deal, where you, so the deck is really stacked towards the people making less money than more money. So if you make less money, yes, you will get the full benefit. In fact, if you make too much money, you're not going to be eligible for a lot of the Social Security benefits for good reason, because you have enough other money to be comfortable. You don't need the Social Security payout. Okay, all right. Let's watch FDR.
Today, a hope of many years standing is in large part fulfilled. The civilization of the past 100 years, with its startling industrial changes, has tended more and more to make life insecure. Young people have come to wonder what would be their lot when they came to old age. The man with a job has wondered how long the job would last. This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 50 millions of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health. We can never insure 100% of the population against 100% of the hazards and vicissitudes of life, but we have tried to frame a law which will give some measure of protection to the average citizen and to his family against the loss of a job and against poverty-stricken old age. Seems to me that if the Senate and the House of Representatives in this long and arduous session had done nothing more than pass this security bill, Social Security Act, the session would be regarded as historic for all time.
All right. So, how many of you have seen Moscow by the Hudson? That's a good movie, nice movie about his life, FDR's life. You should watch it. I occasionally hand out movie tips, right? So, okay. So, all right. So, how did it start? So that was the 1935, 14th August 1935 is what you heard there. And FDR signed the bill, and you earn and deserve the benefits. The more you earn, the higher your benefit will be, except that when you earn too much, the benefits will phase out and it'll go to others who are deemed to be more deserving since they don't make as much. That's the whole idea of this, of Social Security. Again, as we said, it was not meant to be a total replacement. It's meant to be just a help, part of your retirement planning. It was never, yeah. So Social Security, think of Social Security as an umbrella. So even though 1935 started the retirement part of it, the various parts that now exist under Social Security, like Medicare and all that, those came much later. So 1939, the survivor's insurance was brought into Social Security. Then 1956, the disability insurance program was initiated. And then, of course, Medicare was passed in 1965, which we now use. And what is interesting is the Affordable Care Act, derisively called Obamacare by a lot of people, is the first major innovation in the healthcare system since 1965. So that's how long it has taken, so over 45, almost 50 years, between major changes in the healthcare system. So 65 was the last major change, and then we had the Affordable Care Act passed a few years ago. So again, so I'll let you, these details are so the taxes that we all pay, so if you have had a job where you get a paycheck, whether it's delivering pizza or any kind of job, you're paying Social Security taxes. And 6.2% of that goes to Social Security, 1.45 goes to Medicare, we all pay, employers match employees. So it's the 7.65 times 2 is what we pay. We pay, and then the matching part comes from the employers. So employers and employees match monies, and it goes into this, and we'll talk about where it goes and how it gets dispersed. Provides roughly 1/3. Now, at this point, at this juncture, full retirement, remember in the early years, in 1935 and a few years after that, retirement was defined at 60. People retired, so you were eligible for full benefits at 60. Now it is 67. Now it's 67. So if you were born after 1960, this is, which I suspect most all of you in this room, you will be deemed fully retired. Full retirement benefits will start at 67. And there's a reason. We'll talk about that. And if you can start receiving benefits from 62 at a reduced rate, but if you wait till you're 67, then you get the full benefit. So what is the problem with the system? So the problem with the system is very simply this. When this whole process was started almost 80 years ago, 70 years ago, We just didn't live long. We had these huge world wars that killed, millions of citizens. So it was never really a big option. I mean, the longevity of people weren't that high. And so as long as enough people, it's the same idea of insurance, right? The insurance pool. Remember we talked about insurance and talked about how natural calamities and disasters can wipe out insurance companies, because if a lot of people start claiming from the same pool at the same time, well, you're going to run out of money. And it's the same problem with this pool for Social Security. If initially you had about 5 people paying into the system for every person taking money out, but as over time, retirees are now living longer because of we don't have major wars anymore. The nature of warfare has changed. We don't line up country to country and go after each other anymore. It's mostly guerrilla warfare and stuff that you see around you. So the nature of battle has changed, which means casualties have dropped precipitously. Medical breakthroughs, new treatments, wonderful medicines and all that we have available means we live longer, healthier lives. And that puts a huge pressure on the Social Security system because we can't raise taxes, right? You think of a politician who will claim boldly, you elect me, I'm going to raise your Social Security taxes so we can fix the system. You tell me the future of that person, whether he or she can win an election. And I have a bridge to sell to you if you do. But the point is that nobody's going to do that. It's political suicide to say that I'm going to raise taxes of any kind. So nobody's going to raise taxes, at least not directly. So, and if you have people living longer and longer in retirement, that means that they're drawing out of the system way more than the money that's coming in. And that's basically the problem of Social Security right now, is that that's why it continues to deplete, because just more money going out than coming in. All right. So, however, that's a separate question of whether this will run out. Congress tends to sort of keep this process going. Like I said, there is a political downside to saying that, okay, we presided over Social Security's demise. That's not going to happen. So it keeps chugging along at some rate. So, and I think that's going to go on. That's not going to change. But the point is that something will need to be done to keep that fund, Social Security pool, from drying up completely. And then that's what's going on. So Congress is allocating money or doing enough to keep that process going and not let it shut down. So here is what happens to your Social Security. So when we all pay, whoever in this room has jobs and work, whatever the job may be, when we collect a paycheck, we pay our taxes, Social Security taxes, and so here's what happens. 75% of that money that comes into the pool goes right back out, comes in and goes out to pay current beneficiaries, current retirees. Administrative costs consume about 1% to maintain the infrastructure, to pay all the hundreds of thousands of workers that work in the Social Security system. That's about 1%. The other 24% is what we're talking about. That's the reserve. That is the Social Security trust fund. That 24%, 25% roughly, the quarter of what the money that comes in every month is what we are talking about. That's the money that goes into this trust fund, Social Security trust fund. And that's the fund that is so important. That's the fund that's depleting. What are the remedies? So really the problem is it's not rocket science. I mean, we understand what the problem is and how the problem has become a problem. There is no controversy about that. We understand that, right? It's a very simple problem, really, in the sense. Simple as in it's easy to understand what's driven the problem to be a problem. what are some of the remedies? How do you fix it? If it's a problem, well, how do you fix it? The most obvious direct fix is to increase the Social Security tax. In fact, economists have estimated that about a 2% increase. 2% means 1% for us, 1% for the matching employee. So about a 2% increase in our Social Security tax would probably go a long way to fixing most of the problems that we have today. However, the problem is, as you know, it's a political problem. Nobody in their right minds is going to suggest, no politician who wants to have a future in politics is going to suggest that directly, and then hope to have a viable political career after that. That's just not going to happen. So that seems to be out at the moment. I'm not saying that nobody will ever propose it or nobody, but right now that's in the landscape. That doesn't seem to be something that anybody wants to entertain. So then the other thing is to raise the Social Security payroll tax cap. We currently pay Social Security payroll taxes on about $100,000 of our annual income. Suggestions are to raise this cap to somewhere between $125,000 to $200,000. That means you tax more people at a higher and higher income levels, and then to get in more revenue. So you increase revenue that way, right? It's simple revenue, bringing money in, more money going out. Right now, less money is coming in than going out. So you have to somehow figure out this side of the ledger equation. How do you increase revenues? That's the question. So we know that direct taxation won't fly. That's politically out. So then the next option is, let's tax the progressively wealthier people, because A, they can make noise, but they can't affect elections well, maybe they can, but so they want to go for to tax more and more higher income bracket people, and that could partially solve the problem. But raising the wage cap would be a burden on middle class families, and we know the current administration will definitely not be in favor of that. Another way, which actually is the preferred way right now, because this is the most passive of the approaches so far, and generates the least controversy, so therefore the government loves this one, is to raise the age of full benefits. So if you can defer when you become eligible for full benefits, then you've partially addressed the problem. So if you, let's say, right now it's 67, you have to be 67 to be eligible for full retirement benefits. Well, it could well be that in the near future that the rule might be that if you were born after 1980, then you have to be 70 before you are eligible for full benefits. And that can well be in the works. So 1980 means all of you in this room probably will be affected by that. So you'll have to be 70 years old before you're eligible for full benefits. And the advantage of this is it's very passive. We don't really care. You don't really think about it that much. You don't get fired up over the fact that you're going to 3 more years. Right now it seems so far away, who cares? So it kind of works out. So in this context, there was a proposal funded or floated by the last president, George W. Bush, regarding having, so the idea was, his idea was that why don't we take 2% of the Social Security tax, 2%, put it aside. So everybody who pays, like all of us who have jobs, we pay our 7.65%. Why don't we take 2% of that? Well, 7.65, so 1% from each side, 1% from my side, 1% from the employer's side, and put it aside in that person's retirement fund. So we create a separate retirement fund for each person, each worker, with 2%. Take 2% of the current Social Security payments, tax payment, into that account, and how about that? That would help out people in the long run. So you will have, and that didn't last very long. That was proposed and was pretty much, out the door within a few months. And the reason was, it was opposed by which group? Was vociferously opposed to it, and it got killed immediately. What do you think? The seniors. Because if 2% has to come out, who's going to get hit right away? The people who are getting the benefits right now, right? So if you pay 2%, if everybody pays 2% less, that means that's billions, that it translates into billions of dollars in potential current benefits that could get affected. Because 2% is going to be coming out of the system totally, and that 2% is billions of dollars in taxes, tax revenue, potential tax revenue that won't be there. And so the seniors were deadly opposed to this one, and it didn't fly. And so it was, and since seniors vote in large numbers, it's a very powerful lobby. And you guys are not as into elections, and so politicians listen more to seniors than they would your age group. So it got killed. I think it had merits, but the problem was that with the 2% would have to be made up by further debt, right? To issue further bonds, new bonds to cover the deficit, and that would be a huge financial burden as well. So there was arguments to be made on either side. In balance, anyway, it was killed. But that was an idea that came out of a recent president a few years back. Hot seat, as Michael says. These are. Oh, there you go. Let's look at a hot seat. I did say I'm going to let you go early, and look at me. I'm going back on my word. Read my lips, and I failed. All right. Why doesn't the government just increase taxes on all multi-billion-dollar companies? Great idea, except what do you think multi-billion companies do? Do you understand the culture of lobbying? And do you understand that multi-billion-dollar companies also have multi-million-dollar lobbyists who make sure that their interests are represented in Congress? That's the problem. So yes, in principle, it's a great idea. Let's tax the insurance companies and the oil companies because they make a ton of money. But it's not going to happen because they also have one of the most powerful lobbying groups in this country. So not going to happen. If we started working young, let's say 16, would we have larger? No, you won't, because after you get after you're fully accredited, in other words, you can start. So the question is, if I started working early, let's say at 16, would we have a larger Social Security than when we retire compared to someone who started later? No, because again, this is a social insurance plan. It's not that if I work early, I'm gonna have more in my account. No, it doesn't work that way. First of all, it's not in your account, it's pay as you go, so it's a set formula for everybody. All it means is that you'll be qualified, fully qualified, much earlier than others, but it doesn't matter because at the end, you will qualify when you qualify and then you're qualified, right? So it's like saying, if I have multiple insurance policies on a given problem, then will I get four times more money? No, you're not gonna get it because when you are gonna get exactly the amount of your dollar losses, no more, no less. If you have 5 policies covering it or 1 policy covering it. So it's the same story with, this is nothing but social insurance, so it's the same idea at work. If we raise Social Security taxes, will this problem occur again in the near future? Probably not, but it depends on how much you raise and so on and so forth. So it's you have to take it in balance. All right, well, I think we'll stop here. So at least